Original warriors. Many devotees have died in Vrindavan. Many Western devotees come to Vrindavan specifically to die, to leave their body. In the very early days, when this began to happen, Srila Prabhupada was personally asked, Srila Prabhupada, when a person dies in Vrindavan, do they go back to the spiritual world? Back to Godhead, back to Goloka Vrindavan? Srila Prabhupada replied, there is a better chance to go back, but it's not guaranteed. Our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy explains to leave this material world, one must be free from the influence of the modes of material nature. Arjuna specifically asks, what if one's journey is not complete? Krishna says then one gets a very pious birth in his next life where he can complete his journey. But it's not guaranteed. So, any specific person, the followers, of course, they proclaim him as the great, the purest Vaishnavas, as Lord Chaitanya, and so on, and he's most certainly gone back. This is the sentiment of the followers. But factually, we cannot guarantee. So today, we are focusing on the service of Brahmananda Prabhu. So different devotees who knew him, who had the blessing of his association in early days ISKCON, they will speak one by one here today, and we will get some understanding of his character, his nature, his fearlessness in serving Srila Prabhupada and helping establish ISKCON. First of all, we would like to speak on the most senior person here, most senior Vaishnava, a person who has taken great responsibility for Srila Prabhupada in different parts of the world, who has many thousands of Vaishnavas under his care, under his direction, His Holiness Kavi Chandra Maharaj.
Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksurmilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantika Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Budale Shrimati Bhakti-Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaur Avani Pracharni Nirvisesha Shunyavari Paschatya Desa Tarini. How many here have read the book, Brahmananda's Life? Highly recommended book. It's fantastic. It's very inspirational. I was so happy to see that book come out because, you know, so many people didn't know about Brahmananda's early life. They'd focused on later things. But it's just amazing, his life. I personally didn't have very much association with him. Indirectly I did because he was the first one in Africa, and you know, the devotees there, they really loved him. They loved him so much. He gave so much shelter, and he brought Krishna to them. They were very unhappy when he left, but they always remember him, the older devotees. So I remember one time he was in LA, he was traveling with Prabhupada, and he was dancing in the kirtan, and it was the first time we saw anybody just running and back and forth, back and forth. And the devotees said, well, he's doing the Bengali shuffle, they call it, and everybody started doing it. But this book, I don't know if it's still around, it should be reprinted, every devotee should read it, how surrendered he was. Like first, famous story how, Prabhupada had kicked out, from at one festival. He was just trying to, he'd heard, pollution from Gaudiya Math or something that were not giving Prabhupada very much a point, so he thought he'd glorify Prabhupada more and got a little out of hand. They went and preached and, with nothing, and then Prabhupada wrote them and told them to go to Pakistan, two brothers. He said, now you know how to live independent of the society, so you can go to Pakistan and start preaching there. So that it wasn't exactly that he was kicking them out, he was training them. So right away they went to New York, they got money, and they went to Pakistan. And then the Prabhupada heard there's a war in Pakistan, and he wrote them to not go, but they already went so quick. And one went east, one went west, and it was quite difficult because they dressed like devotees, and the Muslims were, attacking them. And finally, Prabhupada, he heard 2 American devotees were killed in Pakistan, and he was so worried. And then somehow they got to Bombay, and Prabhupada greeted him very lovingly and, was so worried. And then after 1 week, he said, now you can go to Africa. And he immediately went to Africa where there was no devotee. So that kind of thing. But the accomplishments he did in those days, getting the Bhagavad-Gita printed, published, so many things. I can't really express, but Prabhupada gave him so much responsibility, he just took everything on board right away. And he was joined very, very early. He was a school teacher in New York. But he'd been to India, he'd studied Bhagavad-Gita for a long time. I know he told me, I think he told me when he told Prabhupada, my father was very abusive, he was always abusing us. And Prabhupada said, that got you here, don't worry about it. Forget about it. So, he took it. Prabhupada told him that every time he saw his mother, he should bow down. And so he would go to his mother's house and he'd bow down, his mother would come out and there's nobody there. And then the mother, she thought, she wanted her sons back, and pretty well-known story, but they were very dedicated, they weren't going to go back home. And she came to Prabhupada saying, they're going crazy with this, and Prabhupada spoke to her, and that became this little pamphlet, who is crazy. And then after that, Prabhupada asked her for a donation, and she said, I already gave you 2 sons. Prabhupada said, thank you very much. So then they were, very beginning time, it's hard to imagine, there's only a few devotees in America right when all the biggest sense gratification was taking off, and, the kids of the baby boom and all the madness, and they just surrendered completely and did whatever Prabhupada asked them to do. So we should, hear these things. I'm sure maybe others had more association with him, but I just kind of witnessed. But that book, it's just one of all the books about Prabhupada and the early devotees. This one is short and, just really amazing how it just covers everything, and really can see what kind of a devotee he was. And then when he was here, I used to go meet him, and they only talk about Prabhupada. That's all they cared about. So everybody liked to go see him. And I'll finish up. And they were, he was working on the computer and, to do all this, publishing all of Prabhupada's lectures and everything, really dedicated, always working. But if anybody came, they just greeted him with great love and only talk about Prabhupada. And it can go on and on, all the things they did to spread Prabhupada when they were older, as a team, all over America and then all over the world when they moved to India. They never lost that focus, no matter what else he was doing. So fortunate to be here, fortunate to, for people like this who got the whole movement started, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We're living in luxury, but it wasn't like that in the early days. Shri Brahmananda Prabhu ki jai. Gaur Prema. If that book is not available, we should definitely reprint it. Huh? Is that a stock? When I tried to get it, he didn't have it.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Kavishandra Maharaj ki. The next speaker is a very, very old devotee. He was in India from the very beginning, did wonderful service in Japan, is back now again, residing in Vrindavan for some years. He's very humble, very unassuming. Not many people know his wonderful glories. But here he is now to speak something about the wonderful, magnificent Brahmananda Ji. His Grace, Gopal Das.
So today we are, as Maharaj said, here to remember a great Vaishnava, Brahmananda Das. I'd like to take you back in time. Most of you cannot imagine life as you know it today without your cell phone, without internet or Facebook. But there was a time when none of these things existed. There was no cell phones, there was no internet, there was no email, there was no cassette recorders, digital players, MP3, whatever you may have now. At one time there was nothing like this. So for communication between one temple and another, it would have to be done, as they say, through snail mail. So handwritten letters. And Brahmananda Prabhu was an East Coast devotee, and I was from the West Coast. And of course, we all know that he was one of Srila Prabhupada's very, very first devotees and disciples. And I can only imagine the feeling these young boys had when they visited Thompson Square Park and saw this elderly Indian man dressed in saffron chanting this Hare Krishna mantra, and then joining with him and beginning to chant and listen to his lectures and his discussions and his insight into the process of self-realization, and then taking up those instructions and beginning to assist Srila Prabhupada. This can only be my dream to have been one of those very, very first devotees who met with Srila Prabhupada. We know that Brahmananda was very instrumental in founding the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, going to the offices in New York, filling out all of the papers necessary. If there was any exchange between the clerks and the officials in the offices, Brahmananda handled all of these, and eventually the International Society for Krishna Consciousness was established. So for me, I was a little bit curious, why Srila Prabhupada called this the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And because when I joined, there was only 7 temples in ISKCON, and it most certainly wasn't an international society. But our services from the East Coast and the West Coast continued, and at one point, the number of temples began to increase. There was more and more devotees coming, and we would get the monthly magazine, Back to Godhead. And in the very beginning, it was mimeographed. It wasn't even printed. It was hand printed on a press. And always there would be pictures of the New York devotees. So for the New York temple, they had maybe a dozen people living in the temple, whereas in my temple we had 4 devotees. So a dozen devotees together chanting Hare Krishna together, of course being led by His Grace Brahmananda Prabhu. It seems so wonderful, such an experience which was beyond my comprehension, that so many devotees would be together chanting. So it was always very exhilarating each month to get the new Back to Godhead magazine, articles written by Brahmananda, translations of lectures that Srila Prabhupada had given, and the wonderful pictures of all of the very young, happy, smiling-faced devotees who had taken up Srila Prabhupada's mission. So these experiences, they continued for a few years, and then in 1970, we opened the new Vrindavan temple. And in Los Angeles, Srila Prabhupada had made 5 boys sannyasis. Brahmananda, Gargamuni, Vishnujan, Subal, Kartikeya, and Devananda. So all of these 5 boys were made into sannyasis. These were the first sannyasis, excluding Kirtananda Swami. Yes, he had been made before. And we had not had the opportunity to see or meet with these devotees because, again, of the distances in which we were doing our service. But at that time, there was a Janmashtami festival being held in New Vrindavan. This was a new community, and I was sent there from Seattle to help them with this community. And on this festival day, these sannyasis came to New Vrindavan. And everyone was anticipating the arrival because everyone thought that sannyasis must be pure devotees. They were something that we had not experienced as of yet in our society. I was very excited, and there was some discourse and exchanges from these devotees, these sannyasis, and they covered many topics. I won't go into all of them, but one thing that they had said that in Los Angeles there had been some disturbances, and they said that Srila Prabhupada was leaving America and he was going to go back to India. And so for me, I became very distraught and thought that I had looked for Srila Prabhupada almost my entire life, and now this person was leaving. What can I do? What can I do? I won't be able to live without Srila Prabhupada. So I thought, what can I do? And then I will try to help Prabhupada. So there was one devotee there in New Vrindavan also. His name was Rudra. He was from Vancouver Temple. Sometimes from Seattle we would go to Vancouver and do Sankirtan together. And we decided that we would, even though Prabhupada was leaving America, we would do something for him. So we went to Chicago, and we started the first temple. So we were there, and one day I got a telephone call saying that you're going to go to India with Prabhupada. And I don't know how I was chosen, but there were 13 of us that were chosen to go. And so everyone knows the history of this first group of devotees, and gradually our numbers began to swell because people started hearing of all of the wonderful programs that were happening here in India. And two devotees who also came were Brahmananda and Gargamuni. They were both, of course, sannyasis. And we had been traveling. At that time, we had no temples in India. We were just living out of our suitcases, going from one town to the next. And we were in Allahabad for the Kumbh Mela festival. This was the first festival there. And sometimes in the morning, Srila Prabhupada would read letters to us from things that were happening in America, because we were disconnected from everything that was happening in the West, and we were young. So he wanted to let us know that this movement was moving forward. And he was reading one particular letter from Bali Mardan. So the GBC had just been established, and Bali Mardan was in charge of Southeast Asia. And so in the letter, Bali Mardan had said that Singapore would be a good place to start a temple. And so Srila Prabhupada was wearing his reading glasses. He took them off and put down the letter. And so he looked at us. We were sitting like this. And he said, "So, who will go?" And so I'm sitting somewhere in that group, and I'm thinking, wow, one of these senior devotees. So at that time, if you joined 1 month or 2 months before the next boy, you were a senior devotee. And so I was thinking someone will volunteer, like Brahmananda, Tamal, or Vishnu John. But everyone was silent and no one said anything. And then I was thinking, why isn't anyone volunteering to go? And then I said, Prabhupada, I'll go. And then Prabhupada said, oh, very good. You will leave immediately. And then another boy says, Prabhupada, I'll go to Tehran. And someone said, maybe. They said, I'll go to Italy. And I'll go here, I'll go there. So one by one, hands were being raised. And then Prabhupada said, yes, very good. And Brahmananda Maharaj, you will go to Africa. And so at that moment, I could understand why Prabhupada called this society the International Society. So at that moment, ISKCON became international. So due to logistics, Brahmananda went this way and I went that way, and we both had our service. I know that he had to endure many obstacles. It never is easy to go to somewhere and to spread this movement. There's always a certain amount of sacrifice that one must be willing to make, hardships that are going to be accompanying you. But if you make these sacrifices, Krishna says that you're the most dear to him. So for many years after that, because of our differences in locations, I never met with Brahmananda on a regular basis. But later in our lives, when we both moved here to Vrindavan, we would come together and we would speak about Prabhupada. And nothing gave either of us more joy than listening to each other's pastimes and stories of Srila Prabhupada. And Brahmananda was he was kind of an idol for all of us devotees, because he had surrendered so early and sacrificed so much and did so many things in the very beginning to assist Srila Prabhupada. So I enjoyed speaking with him, and we all know that Brahmananda was quite a big man, and next to speaking and telling wonderful stories about Srila Prabhupada, he loved to talk about food. So I would tell him, oh, today I'm going to cook this preparation. And he goes, oh. And then he says, yes, and tomorrow I'm going to make Mexican food. Ooh. So he would just shake in his chair, and if you would bring him prashadam, something wonderful, immediately you became very dear to him in his heart. So we should always remember these devotees. Don't let them slip from your consciousness. Devotees like Brahmananda Maharaj, they sacrificed so much to make what you see today a reality, and they will always be so dear to Srila Prabhupada. So I'm so fortunate to have known him, and I just hope that I can emulate his behavior and keep Prabhupada most dear in my heart.
Thank you very much, Gopal Prabhu. Wonderful memories of Brahmananda and his amazing contribution to Srila Prabhupada, to ISKCON Hare Krishna movement. When Srila Prabhupada went into the West, certain young men were inspired to join Prabhupada, to help him in his mission. They had no qualification, they were untrained, they were from the Western culture, they weren't sensitive to the subtleties of Vaishnava culture, of Krishna consciousness, but they were very, very enthusiastic to help Srila Prabhupada. One time in Vrindavan, 1975, one Indian devotee, Satchidananda, he was trying to persuade Srila Prabhupada to give him sannyas. Prabhupada said, no, best to remain a brahmachari. The dialogue went backwards and forwards. And finally, Satchidananda Prabhu, he said to Srila Prabhupada, he said, Srila Prabhupada, you're giving sannyas to these young Western boys. Sometimes they're only 3 or 4 years in the movement. And as Gopal said, originally they weren't even 3 or 4 years, the first batch of sannyasis. Srila Prabhupada looked at him and he said, these Western boys are coming from such a degraded culture. He said, Lord Krishna only sees their service. He does not see their faults. He said, you are from a Brahmin family. If you would fall down, this would be a great pity. He said, the best, the safest is for you to remain brahmachari. If you want to take sannyas, he said, first you should marry for some time. So this stuck with me. Prabhupada, there were so many disturbances, so many faults, so many fights, but Prabhupada says Krishna only sees the service of these people. They're coming from such an unusual, such an unexpected background to help Srila Prabhupada in this mission, so that here in India today, now we have 85 temples. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Next speaker is actually not here today. She resides here in Vrindavan, but she's gone somewhere for health reasons. However, she sent a letter, sent an email, which is going to be read by Devi Shakti. So Devi Shakti Mataji is going to read an offering in celebration, in praise of Brahmananda Prabhu by Mahadev. Is Devi Shakti here?
Okay. I will always be grateful to you, Brahmananda Prabhu, for sharing your memories and the unlimited glories of Srila Prabhupada with me. During the last 5 years of your life in Vrindavan, right up to the moment you left this world to go back to Prabhupada to serve him eternally. The last day in your body, June 7, 2015, from 4 a.m. in the morning when Gargamuni called me, right up till 3:20 p.m. in the afternoon when you departed from your body, is a day etched in my heart forever. How amazing that you left us on the auspicious appearance day of Sri Vakeshwar Pandit, one of Lord Chaitanya's intimate dancers. Especially significant that you departed on this day, as you were Prabhupada's first dancer at Tompkins Square Park. A famous photo from 1967 shows you dancing the Swami step while Prabhupada was chanting Hare Krishna and playing his tom-tom. Prabhupada was so happy when that photo was printed in the local New York newspaper. Your last day was an ongoing challenge, hearing you gasping for air, barely able to speak, but making it very clear, don't let them take me out of Vrindavan. Don't let them take me out of Vrindavan. You told me twice, and ironically, had told me 2 weeks prior. In serving as your caregiver, I was bringing one doctor to your flat. You were experiencing some heavy breathing problems just 2 weeks prior. You told Dr. Maheshwari and me, whatever happens with my health, I don't want to leave Vrindavan. That day after your departure, I called Dr. Maheshwari, who attended Brahmananda's cremation, and he told me, I think he knew. Brahmananda was well liked by several doctors who all received CDs of Srila Prabhupada. Brahmananda used to tell us that Prabhupada predicted there would be big preaching in hospitals with doctors because we're all going to get old. We were all in our 20s when Prabhupada said that. At that time, 30 was old. Then you sang a line from the Beatles. The line goes, when I'm 64. We thought 64 was ancient, you said, and now here we are. Prabhupada said, don't think this won't happen to you. Old age, disease, and then death. And we see this all the time in Vrindavan. You had fallen that early morning and Gargamuni called me, freaked out, at around 4 a.m. I rushed over to find you on the floor with blood all around. You had a big gash on your head. While cleaning up the blood, I kept reassuring you. I called a few brahmacharis, Saranga and Dharmatma, and they lifted you and your body into your preaching chair. With a lot of grunting and bumping, I might add, your body was 350 pounds. You eventually left that body some 12 hours later in your preaching chair. It's described that great saints leave their bodies in the place where they preach. In those last 5 years, you engaged me in arranging groups of devotees in your flat to hear about Srila Prabhupada. We felt as though we were meeting with Prabhupada every time we heard you speak. Every time in your presence, even now, hearing Prabhupada's glories from you on YouTube. You had this iconic mood about you that imbibed the presence of Prabhupada. There are more than 200 letters between Prabhupada and you, and more than 200 photos of Prabhupada and you. We are trying to publish them. Your life was about pleasing Prabhupada. You told us once you didn't hesitate when Prabhupada asked you to do something, like when Prabhupada asked all his big men to go to Africa and everyone was too terrified. Back in the early 70s, Africa was a wild jungle with scary-looking people. Then Prabhupada turned to you. Brahmananda, you will go? And you said immediately, yes, I will go to Africa, Srila Prabhupada. So many times Prabhupada's Gita manuscript had been rejected in America. Then Krishna arranged for the Macmillan chapter in the eternal glorious volumes of Prabhupada's life. Prabhupada sent you to the Macmillan office and told you what to say. You did exactly what Prabhupada told you to do, and the rest is history. Prabhupada used you in numerous ways because he trusted you as his dear son. My dear devotees, you must be knowing that Brahmananda and Gargamuni Prabhus were going to inherit several $1 million from their father. But the father said, you must choose, the Swamiji or me. They chose Swamiji and were instantly disowned by their father. Brahmananda, you went back to tell Prabhupada that they wanted to give you all that money. With tears in your eyes, you would describe this story, how Prabhupada held you both in his divine arms, telling you, that's okay, I will be your father. You can feel the intimacy in the photos between Prabhupada and Brahmananda. I could go on and on with stories about you, Brahmananda Prabhu, but I'll end with one humorous encounter with you. Your visa was going to expire a few months before you left us, and there was no way you could get on a plane to America for a new visa. So I started the procedure of acquiring a medical visa. I had done a few before, so I followed the required steps, which included going to U.S. Embassy with your medical file, getting the U.S. Embassy official stamp, then taking that to the CMO in Mathura. By Krishna's arrangement, all three chief medical officers were meeting together that day. I showed them the photos I had taken of Brahmananda, along with his thick medical file, appealing for medical visa. I told them they should come see Brahmananda to prove that he was medically unfit to travel. To my surprise, they all agreed. Chalo, let's go. So they took their car, and I led the way in an auto rickshaw. On the way, I called you, Brahmananda, and told you, lie down on your bed with your oxygen mask on. Turn the machine on. Turn the lights off. They're coming. We were chuckling as it seemed like a sitcom. The four of us arrived at your door, and I knocked, slowly opening the door, softly saying, Brahmananda, the doctors are here. We're coming in. I turn on the light and tell the doctors to sit down. 3 pairs of brown eyes become huge and their mouths dropped open. There before them, lying down, was this enormous, massive mountain of a body with an oxygen mask on and a gurgling sound. We had agreed on the phone to fix the tube so it would make that sound. When Brahmananda rose up, like the Titanic, they all slightly leaned back. It was such a comical sight. They spoke for a while with Mr. Bruce Scharf, and on the spot signed the required papers. Brahmananda had told them, I just want to live out my last days in Vrindavan. Thank you very much. The senior officer patted his back and said, that's all right. I described to them the great service they were doing for a great devotee and gave them each a small book. They seemed happy to do their service for Brahmananda. Krishna perfectly arranged, of course, for Prabhupada's dear son. Thank you, Brahmananda Prabhu, for your friendship, association, and for sharing Prabhupada with me in so many ways. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada, for giving us your divine grace, and Sri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, your servant, Mahadevi Dasi.
It was wonderful. Just nice memories of Brahmananda Prabhu by Mahadevi. The next speaker is a person who has a very long history with Vrindavan. Back in the 70s, when we first established the temple, he was one of the managers here. And for many years, his wife, who sadly is deceased, she was a collector for collecting for the Gurukul. Now again, he's back in Vrindavan. He's a wonderful devotee, very intelligent person, and I'm sure he's going to make a great contribution to the management here in Vrindavan. I'd like to call upon Tosa Krishna Prabhu to speak. Hare Krishna.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I met Brahmananda Prabhu in 1969. At that time in the society, it was very typical to be reassigned on a regular basis. Almost like in the military, you would be assigned here, you'd be assigned there. Suddenly you get a letter from Srila Prabhupada telling you to go somewhere else. I had never met Brahmananda Prabhu until that time, and it was a great shock because not only was he very massive in countenance and size, but he was very massive in his enthusiasm for Krishna consciousness, for Srila Prabhupada. He was the epitome of a big brother who was there to exude everything that you'd want to become. I'm not a very much of a follower type in the terms of personalities. People who know me know that I'm not a sycophant type who enjoys becoming overly charmed by other personalities. But Brahmananda Prabhu at that time was the perfect example of the analogy that Srila Prabhupada gives, that when the iron is put in the fire, it becomes fire. And it was no coincidence that his enthusiasm, his devotion, all of his sacrifice for Srila Prabhupada resulted in him becoming like fire. The fire of Krishna consciousness. His association was immediate. You immediately became convinced that there was a higher power acting. And as I say, I'm not a person who usually succumbs to becoming very sentimental about these things. But it was very obvious to me that he was glowing. He was glowing. What was the situation? The situation was we were in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. What was in the Lower East Side? The lowest creatures, practically. It was the poorest neighborhood. Srila Prabhupada had to start in a very humble situation. So there were, it was Skid Row, it was called. It was just 1 block away, where there were drunkards sleeping in the doorways. There were drug addicts running around on the streets. I was from a very nice suburb. I had never seen such a degradation. And Brahmananda was like the lotus, growing in this murky, strange atmosphere. He was obviously above it all, and he gave me total inspiration to stick it out. What would we do? We would chant Hare Krishna, collect and distribute books, distribute prasadam, in an atmosphere in which we were considered aliens. Most New Yorkers could not in any way at that time appreciate us. If we went somewhere, if you go today, for instance, to Wall Street and chant Hare Krishna, this is the financial district, people will join in the chanting with you. The executives, all the highly educated people, they will clap and dance with you. I've seen this. But back then, they would laugh at you or even physically attack you. So this was the situation in which Brahmananda Prabhu was resolved to serve Srila Prabhupada and spreading his infectious attachment to Srila Prabhupada. Because this is a time when we normally give a class, and Prabhupada tells us to be Shastra Chakshush, I'd like to refer to Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the Madhya Lila, chapter 22, Lord Chaitanya is speaking to Sanatana Goswami, and he's explaining the aspects of devotional service. He's explaining the characteristics of those who follow and those who make advancement in devotional life. And of course, there's the famous verse where he says, devotees are always, and he describes the 26 qualities of a devotee, merciful. I never met a more merciful devotee. Brahmananda was very insistent on running a tight ship. He didn't take any nonsense. But if a devotee was having difficulty, he was completely there for you. Humble. He was devoted to Srila Prabhupada. That is the description, that is the definition of humble. And he was only interested in serving Srila Prabhupada. Truthful. Brahmananda was an amazing person because he had no airs about him. He didn't have any, he was not putting on any attitude or he was not trying to be diplomatic. So he was extremely truthful, equal to all. He was a big brother to all of the devotees in the temple, and we always felt it. Faultless, I'll leave that for Krishna to decide. Magnanimous, he was completely, the definition, by the way, of faultless is that one devotes one's life to Krishna consciousness and follows the instructions of the spiritual master. That's the ultimate definition. Magnanimous, Brahmananda is famous for being so welcoming, and he encourages everyone. Mild and clean. Brahmananda was a total gentleman in every respect. They were without material possessions. I remember, besides two dhotis, Brahmananda had one pair of pants. It was famous. Anytime he ever had to go somewhere, he had that one set. They are desireless. They are peaceful, surrendered. They are indifferent to material acquisitions and are fixed in devotional service. They completely control the 6 bad qualities: lust, anger, greed, and so forth. And they are not inebriated. They are respectful, grave, compassionate, and without false prestige. They are friendly, poetic, expert, and silent, which is an aspect of graveness. Brahmananda did not talk prajalpa. He only talked about Prabhupada. That is the definition of silence. There's one quality I've left here that describes they eat only that which was required. I think we'll leave that for others to decide. But he only took Krishna prasadam. And when he was here in India, when he first came, dancing, Prabhupada called him the dancing elephants. And Prabhupada was very proud of him. So, according to, we are using this time, which is normally for Bhagavatam, for discussing Shastra. Our society is ultimately not based on sentimentality. It is based on the absolute truth, which is given to us through various Shastras, through the Parampara. And I can attest, as a witness, that in 1969, as I associated with Brahmananda, he exuded these qualities better than any devotee I have ever met. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So thank Krishna Prabhu. It is so wonderful at gatherings like this, when devotees offer praise to other devotees, for us to get a glimpse of the wonderful, wonderful qualities that devotees have, and the incredible hard work that they did in developing some new aspect of the Krishna conscious movement. The next speaker has lived in Vrindavan for many years. She's done so much service in so many different ways. She was the person who first made a children's Krishna book. There were several volumes, I think 3 volumes, and this made it easy for children to understand the stories of Krishna. Instead of making it her own publication, which many people do nowadays, she did it on behalf of BBT, so it's a BBT publication. She's lived here in Vrindavan for many years also was maintaining and the samadhi, particularly collecting funds, doing repairs and so on. A wonderful devotee, Parvati Devi Dasi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I first met, I never even heard of any, I was a new devotee, I'd never heard who were the senior devotees, who was who, and what was what. I went from, as a new devotee, I went from Mayapur to England, and in a few months after that, I heard the glories of the preaching in Africa, so I went to Kenya, and I took up services as a cook and various other things, and eventually I did the Boga run, which was basically Madhukari, and wouldn't come home without a full pickup truck every day, twice a day. So I was the cook. And one day, Brahmananda Swami arrived from India, and as I say, I didn't really know who was who, and everybody was devotees, but I could understand that there was a wonderful presence about this devotee who just arrived. Not just that he was very large, but he emanated of Krishna consciousness. And somehow, I just stayed and I watched. And one by one, very quickly, the life members would arrive in the temple and pay their full-out dandavats to Brahmananda Swami. And I'm just watching and I'm seeing. And finally, my god sister Rasalila says to me, Srila Prabhupada is our spiritual master, but Brahmananda is our guru. He brought Krishna consciousness to Kenya. So then I understood. And then by great fortune, because I was a temple cook, I also had the favor of Brahmananda, who loved to eat. So he loved to preach, and he loved to take Krishna prasadam. He would take us out on different preaching programs. Once or twice a week, we would go to some large Indian preaching program, and once or twice a week, we would go out into the villages and distribute prasadam. He wasn't one of these type of people who just stays in his office and sends you out to do the work. The situations in Africa were a little bit austere in a different way than it was austere in India in those days. We were preaching basically to people who were illiterate, so there was no book distribution. Even we couldn't get books. I was also the secretary, so I had to write letters. Brahmananda would dictate these letters to the BBT of how to send the books, because the foreign exchange laws in Africa were so complicated that they had to do everything exactly right. So, I mean, I think in 2 years I must have continuously had dictation from Brahmananda about how to get these books, and we couldn't get books. And it was really a frustrating experience. And then finally, Brahmananda, I didn't type this letter. Brahmananda sends a letter to Prasanama, who was in charge of the BBT in Bombay. And now in India, there are also complicated foreign exchange rules. And in addition to that, there was a port strike. So this little love letter from Brahmananda, I swear I didn't type this letter. I want you to send these books or I'm going to break every bone in your body. So this was a state of the frustration. We couldn't get any literature. So the program was prasadam distribution, and Harinam. And that's what we did every day. Prasadam distribution we had in the temple. Some of the village and street boys would come, and then we'd go out to the village. Brahmananda himself would go out on life membership, and he would maybe travel to different villages and also make membership, or he would take us to the different villages and have prasadam distribution. So there was a good Indian community, and they were very supportive. And he was able to cultivate so many really influential people, to the point that when the Ananda Margis exploded some of the buildings in the municipality, they were going to kick out all the Indian type of religions, but the Indian community was, Brahmananda appealed to these people to let us stay, because we were doing we were doing a lot of food distribution, and so they let us alone. Now it was very, very austere in another way, is that Brahmananda couldn't convince anybody to come to Africa. So the people that he got were generally the people that nobody else wanted. And they did have a spirit of adventure, so they came. But working with these people was half of them belonged in a mental asylum, and the other half were very eccentric. So it was a little difficult, but Brahmananda was, although he was a no-nonsense man, he was, as Prabhupada did, he was able to do in Africa. He took all these varieties of people, devotees, and made a big movement in Kenya. I mean, it was very frustrating. He had me type a letter to Srila Prabhupada, which is very short. Why are we here? We're not making any devotees. Should we close down our temples here? And Prabhupada wrote immediately back. He said, no, just maintain my temple in Nairobi. And he maintained the temple in Nairobi with all the austerities that we had, and in Mombasa. And today there's a huge temple in Nairobi where we had a small house, and it was built in a very huge way, and they got the surrounding properties also. And in Mombasa, where we had a very large community of Gujaratis, they got a very large temple there in Mombasa, and I'm told in Kisumu and Nakuru also. So, although it didn't look like we were doing anything, but because he wasn't attached to the fruits of his labor, he continued, and we all continued in this service. He was very, very kind and very loving and very generous. If you were cheating, then you didn't get that kind of treatment. He was very strong in that way. But in other ways, I found him very protective. He was very, as I say, as Prabhupada did, he did. And I remember one particular, I don't remember too many lectures any time at all, but this one lecture, I guess it was maybe about Ajamil, and Brahmananda said, if you fall down, you pick yourself up by the bootstraps, and you get up, and you keep going. And I think he knew where he was sitting, and where we were all sitting, to say something like that. He kept on going. He's lived in India for so many years, as we heard from Mahadevi. And since in 2000, I began the Bhagavad-Gita classes in English, which we held in Prabhupada's house. And Brahmananda loved the Bhagavad-Gita. And he would sit there for years. When he came, he would sit there for years. Every night, he would come to the Bhagavad-Gita class. And after the Bhagavad-Gita class, there would be the Brahmananda commentary class. It was ecstatic. It was really ecstatic. We had a very big group that time. So Prabhupada referred to them as those two brothers. He told Gargamuni to take care of Brahmananda. It's hard to understand, but Gargamuni kept close to Brahmananda, and Prabhupada referred to them as those two brothers. And it's very interesting that he also referred to them on the altar as those two brothers. So he was very affectionate to them. And we will miss them. They were the jewels of Vrindavan. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Parvati Devi Nancy. A message has come from Panchagoda Prabhu, our temple president. He says, "My dear Brahmananda Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We are very much missing you. Having your valuable association was our great fortune. You have helped Srila Prabhupada in establishing our ISKCON society. Your warm smile and twinkle in your eye, often crying while remembering Srila Prabhupada. Very much missing your stories and memories of the early days, and you so many times being personal with the Lord's pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. I'm very happy to be your friend and have had the incredible opportunity to serve you at Srila Prabhupada's Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir, Brahmananda Prabhu Ki Jai." Parvati Devi Dasi spoke very nicely how Srila Prabhupada was in Africa and the difficulty there with preaching with people who often couldn't even read and write. Prior to Africa, Brahmananda Prabhu and Gargamuni, his brother, by same parents, biological brother, they were in Africa. Brahmananda later quoted Srila Prabhupada as saying, "I will give the dust from my feet to anyone who preaches in the Muslim countries." I heard Srila Prabhupada say something slightly different, so I'm not sure if it's the same thing that Brahmananda heard, or if Prabhupada said something slightly different on another occasion. But I heard Srila Prabhupada here in Vrindavan saying, "To anyone who goes to preach in the Muslim countries, I will take the dust from their feet." So Brahmananda heard that Prabhupada would give the dust from his own feet, and I heard that Prabhupada saying that he would take the dust from Srila Prabhupada. So, not many devotees have gone to the Muslim countries. Of course, Satyanarayan Prabhu now has a Bhagavad-Gita in Arabic language, and Ravanari, he was a Palestinian. He first translated the Bhagavad-Gita into the Arabic language. So there are a few devotees, Tehran also, there are a few devotees who have gone to Muslim countries and preached. But I think Brahmananda was the first. He was the very first person to go. He's such an amazing devotee. In order for us to fully appreciate the original New York devotees we have to go way back in time and put things in perspective. Srila Prabhupada was a sannyasi here in Vrindavan. Here in Vrindavan we see so many Babas, so many sannyasis. Srila Prabhupada was like this. He was unknown. He begged passage on a ship. When I was first here in India, there was first class on the train, there was second class on the train, and there was a third class, which has since been abolished. There was third class on the train. And third class on the train, it was very inexpensive, there was no facilities, it was Srila Prabhupada going to America on a cargo ship was like this third class on the train. When he arrived there, he had very little money. It costs more money today to buy a guest coupon to take prasadam than Srila Prabhupada had money that he arrived in New York in. The guest coupon is more costly. Prabhupada would not have had enough money to buy that guest coupon. It's more money than he had. He went with nothing. 1972, when we started building the temple here, an American dollar got 10 rupees. So each American cent was worth 10 paisa. You could get 10, 7 was sufficient, I accept that. 10 paisa was the cost of a house brick. A brick that we build the temples, the bricks cost 10 paisa, which was equivalent to 1 American cent. So Srila Prabhupada was going to a place with no money, and each penny was important. He would write on a piece of paper how much he was spending, just like he did in New York, just like he did in Delhi, walking around all over in the summertime to distribute his back to Godhead. Prabhupada would walk around all over New York. He had no money for the subway, no money for buses, no money. Garga Muni, as Mahadevi said, the father was rich. He did not want, he was New York, Jewish, did not want his sons going to this Hare Krishna organization. Wanted them to stay. He told them, I will disinherit you. I will give you no money of my fortune if you go with the Swami. And Prabhupada, the story where Prabhupada said, I will be your father. But Garga Muni and Brahmananda, they hatched a plot. Garga Muni did go back to his father's house. He went back to his father's house. He said, I'm finished with this Hare Krishna thing. I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to make money, do business. He borrowed, he told his father this wonderful business plan he had, and he borrowed $10,000 from his father. He put the check in the bank, and he stayed in his mother's house, enjoyed his father's company and hospitality until the check cleared. When the check cleared, he took out the money in the bank, he left his father's house, went to Srila Prabhupada, who had the manuscript for the Nectar of Devotion. Each American cent was buying a house brick in India. Prabhupada had no money. There was no money to print. Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu summary study as the Nectar of Devotion. Brahmananda and Garga Muni Prabhu, they gave the money to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada wrote, when he published the book, thank you for the kind donation from Bruce and Gregory Sharp. That is how the money came. There was a Chinese warrior who united the whole of China. He eventually, from a small local tribe, he eventually conquered the whole of India. His strategy was burn the bridges and break the pots. Because just like we have the Ganges, there are many, many big rivers in China. And generally the river denotes the edge of the territory. So they would go to the territory, they would have a big meal, then they would break the pots. Then they would take the boats over the river to conquer the new area, and when they arrived, they would burn the boats. So there was no food and no escape, no retreat. You had to conquer this thing, and today, tomorrow there's no food for tomorrow. We have to do it today. We have to be successful today. Brahmananda and Garga Muni, they burned their bridges, they burned their boats with their father. They stole the money from him. Tricked the father. Brahmananda had given up Krishna, don't want to do it. Father gave him the money. As soon as he checked it, he went back, gave the money to Prabhupada. This is how ISKCON started. Now we have a wonderful society with wonderful facilities. But it started with the sacrifice of Brahmananda, Garga Muni, who shut the door on their family. Never again could they go for a single penny, ever again. This they did. Amazing. Wonderful devotees. And this we are honoring today. We're honoring his service, Garga Muni, Brahmananda. The next speaker we have is a wonderful devotee, my very good friend for many, many years, a person who has had an exemplary life of devotion, and now he's taking big preaching responsibility in his native country of Nepal. I'd like you all to appreciate the words Dari Bhaksha Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पश्चात्देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि श्री गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे, हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। थैंक यू समरारी प्रभु जी। हरे कृष्णा। Okay. Thank you Dharmatma Prabhu also, because he told me day for yesterday, Prabhuji, we are celebrating Brahmananda Prabhu's disappearance, so you please attend the programs. So I say, okay, no problem, he's my senior most God brothers, so I definitely attend this. So actually, Brahmananda Prabhu's today disappearance day, celebrating here, Siddham Vrindavan, in front of Krishna Balam temple, in front of Prabhupada. This is the residence in Prabhupada place. Prabhupada said, Vrindavan is my residence, Mumbai is my office. So we are here in Prabhupada residence, and this Brahmananda Prabhu also live body here. So this also is residence. So we are very fortunate today. So now, because Brahmananda Prabhu is very senior most, I heard Prabhupada cassettes, Hindi lecture. So Prabhupada say, Brahmananda, when मैं डुगडुगी बजा रहा था तो ब्रह्मानंद पहले बार आके कीर्तन में नाचा था। ये बालक पहले नाचा था कीर्तन में। तो प्रभुपाद जी हिंदी लेक्चर में कह रहे हैं, तो कह रहे थे, तो इसीलिए ब्रह्मानंद महाराज इज वेरी सीनियर मोस्ट एंड द सोसाइटी already my senior God brothers, God sisters, they have explaining, discussed nicely all his qualities. but I have not much association. But I know him very long time when I joined in 1975 and here Vrindavan. That time he was a sannyasi, but he's always with the associate, the Prabhupada. He's a GBC, different places. When he came to India, I saw a long company with the Prabhupada, morning walk, everything. He's always keeping smiling. He always talk. Then after he came to Vrindavan here, then after he became my friend, he was here. Then he was talking to me, how are you, everything okay, she's speaking nicely to me. So then, because he was free that time, so then one Prabhupada Vyas Puja day, I spoke, I chant Prabhupada Stotra here. So then after the Vyas Puja is over, I was just standing nearby. Then he came to me, he said, Dadibhaksha Prabhuji. I said, yes. So this is the Prabhupada Mangalacharana Stotra, very nice. Prabhupada like very much. You should always chant this Stotra. This is real Prabhupada Mangalacharan. I love very much. Oh, very wonderful. Reminding all the world's times. This is wonderful. He told me that, he gave me the blessings to me. So he's very kind and very nice too. So he's a good friend, friendly, all the living under tea. He talks each and everybody nicely, walking, talking. He's very smart. He did wonderful service in Prabhupada mission. So I very much appreciate him. When his disappearance day, I was also here. I went to the Keshi Ghat along with the devotee, with the kirtan, everything. So I'm very fortunate to attend all these things for him. So I like to thank you today for his disappearance. They invite me to speak. Hare Krishna. Dhanyavad.
Hare Krishna. It's getting late. I've noticed some of the people on my list are no longer here. Gumapati Prabhu, is he in the temple? Vidya Mataji, is she in the temple? Manjari Mataji, is Manjari Mataji in the temple? Govinda Mataji. Govinda from USSR. Radhakund Mataji is busy today. There's Simha Chaitanya from Baltimore. I know these things. This is a devotee I have not met before. I cannot sing his glories.
नमस्ते नमस्ते कृपा पूर्ण दृष्टि नमस्ते नमस्ते महानंद धात्री नमो नमो पूर्ण रक्ष रक्ष प्रसिद्ध प्रभु पाहि मां दक्ष दक्ष भक्ते सिद्धांत शिष्याय भक्ति वेदांत नामिने प्रसन्नाय प्रसन्ताय तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। अभय चरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय हो। गुरवे गौरचंद्राय राधिकायै कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धु भैव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। All senior Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, please accept my humble obeisances. And today I am so fortunate I have opportunity to speak about Brahmananda Prabhu. There is many incidents and very glorious story of Brahmananda Prabhu. First of all, when I was in temple commander and new Bhakta director, and Prasannatma Prabhu and Mother Parvati, they are the caretaker of the temple of Bombay. So first day, when I see one sannyasi came, it's so heavy body, and he put his stick, danda, means tridanda, front of Prabhupada, and he pay his obeisances. I was very early that time. When I see his whole tummy was putting pressure in the floor, but head could not touch. Immediately I am thinking, how come? Pranam supposed to be nose and head has to be touched. Then that pranam has to be offered to, but he cannot do it. That time, Giriraj Swami Maharaj's assistant is Mother Aditya, who was lived in Vrindavan many years. And Aditya Mataji is very close to us. When she go to a restaurant, that time a restaurant and Bhakti Kalakshetra also both, me and Surdas Prabhu was in charge. And I said, Mother Aditya, said, what? I said, do you know that sannyasi? It is so heavy, he could not pay obeisances. Who is he? Mother Aditya told me, you don't know? I said, no, I don't know. And then he said, he is Brahmananda Swami, very close to Srila Prabhupada. Then I got little, oh, Prabhupada love him so much. Next day, whenever there is any senior Vaishnava pass through in Mumbai temple, and Giriraj Swami and Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, that time Gopal Krishna Maharaj was not in sannyasi, he was in white cloth. So they both sent me to give little massage to any person get little sick or. So they called me, Brahmananda is very special one. Go and give him little massage, you will get all sukriti or blessing. I went to him. I said, Maharaj, can I give you little massage? He said, where you come from? I said, I come from Jagannath Puri, Biram Chandrapur Shasan. Then he said, oh, you are son of Brahmin? I said, yes, Maharaj. Well, then, no, don't touch my feet. Before I am thinking, such a sannyasi, heavy body, now I am thinking, oh, he is so merciful one, he don't want I should touch his feet. I got so much love towards him in that word. Then next day, he has to come to eat breakfast in Govinda's. That time we have approximately half kilo paneer pakoras and we have juice and etc. other things. And I serve him, but Maharaj completely everything. All pakodas he eat and juice and everything. Then he came 12 o'clock, 12:30 noon prasadam in the restaurant. We gave him all whatever 11, 12 preparations. He eat nicely. Then he came evening. Then we have to serve him because he's the special one. Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Giriraj Swami. Everybody told me he eat also nicely. Then I am thinking how good eater he is and has good digestion power. Then slowly I am very close to him. That day in Rath Yatra in Mumbai, and that time we do the drama. And I was in Ravana's role, and there is one Gujarati girl, she become Mother Sita. And that day Sri Ram Vijay is the drama in Chopati and near the ocean. And he also gave a lecture, very nice lecture, wonderful lecture. But he always give lecture not in a serious mood. Always give very nice, sweet talk. Everybody laugh. And that particular day, after his lecture, he just sit down approximately 10 feet far away in the chair. We have to do the drama. So then the fourth scene came, Sita Haran. So I was in Ravana's role, and I have big mustache. And Mother Sita also, the story is I am holding Mother Sita and I have to take her out of the stage. Site, मैं लंकापति रावण हो. Site! When I act, what happened that day in my mustache, one side is not stick properly. As soon as I say, Site, मैं लंकापति रावण, it's coming one side and going one side. Then Mother Sita supposed to act like she is crying or she is in pain, but she is laughing. Okay? So then microphone is there, then anybody can understand. Somebody is laughing in a serious scene. I said, I am thinking, what is going on here? She is supposed to cry, and now she is laughing. Then my role will go down, 5,000-6,000 people in front of me. What I did, I hold her hand very tight, but she had the Bengal, that is all in kants. It broke. Some up went in my hand, some up went in her hand. Then I said, Main Sitapati. Then I pull her. I fell down because I am out of the stage. She fell down top of me. Then Maharaj came out. Said, what happened? What happened? I said, Maharaj, do you know? I am acting, she is laughing. Maharaj laughed so much, then he pulled me out and take care of me very nicely. One day, he also giving the lecture, somebody stolen his camera. Then Maharaj asked me, this is India, you know that this is a very, very valuable camera of mine. Finally, we never find, somebody took him. That day he got so upset. And I said, I am so sorry, Maharaj, I do not know these things happen, that happened. Then, long time, he also went somewhere, I went to USA. Then, one day, I was in temple president of Baltimore Temple, and I gave the lecture. After the lecture, I am coming outside. That's the summer time. And what I saw, the Brahmananda Prabhu is putting the table, all Prabhupada's books, and one of the Haridas Thakur film. Then as soon as I see him, I pay him obeisances, I hug him, he also hugged me. Then I said, what happened? Because I saw him in a sannyas, so now I am seeing him in white. I got totally confused. Long time after, he was in Washington DC, Then he said, Narsingh Chaitanya, everything. But I never feel bad. He is such a sweet person. I never feel bad. He was a sannyasi, now he is in white. My heart full of love towards him. Then he said, Narsingh Chaitanya, you know that you act in the film of Haridas Thakur, I am selling them. Then he gave me one cassette. I watched. Although I was the hero in that film, I never saw the film. And Sridhar Swami Maharaj sold to ITV. But I got so much beating. But that is the first time he saw me. Then after he came to Vrindavan, then when I heard he passed away, and it is very, very painful in my heart. Devotees, I want to tell you, Srila Prabhupada burned many lamps for remove darkness of material world. One of the lamp is Brahmananda Prabhu. Kulam pavitram janani krutartha vasundhara bhagyavati cha dhanya swargye stita epitaro hi dhanya eshankule Vaishnavanamadheyam. Does not matter that Vaishnava come from Western country or this country or that country. Aswastha mahadvriksho kakavistha samudbhava gunena sarve pujyapi kulena king prayojanam. Aswastha is banyan tree. Sometimes you see the big temples, in the old temples, you saw there is a banyan tree, top of that. Where that tree come from there? The crow's stool. Crow eat the fruit and they pass the stool and banyan tree come out. And we worship them according to Bhagavad-Gita, Aswastha Mahadavriksho. Aswastha Sarvavrikshanam means the Vishnu Vriksha, we worship them. Like those devotees may burn in Western country, but which way he serves Srila Prabhupada, which quality he has, that is worshipable. That's why Kulam Pavitram, that type of a son, whoever produced that mother, that Kula means family, is become auspicious. Kulam Pavitram, Janani Krutartha. Janani is the mother. She produced the great hero like Brahmananda Prabhu, Brahmananda Swami, great warrior of our Krishna consciousness movement for representative of Srila Prabhupada. Janani Krutartha, she become blissful. Vasundhara, Bhagyavati Chadhanya. Who is Vasundhara? Is Medini. Bhu Bhumi Achala Ananta Vishwambhara Stiraha Dhara Dharitri Dharani Khyoni Jyakasyapi Khiti Sarvangshaha Vasumati Vasudharvi Vasundhara Go Atraku Prithvi Prithvi Khma Abani Medini Mahi. The 27 names of Mother Earth or Bhumi. So Vasundhara become also auspicious when this type of a devotee appeared. Vasundhara Bhagyavati Chadhanya Swarge Stitaye Pitaro Hi Dhanya. Those forefathers, they live in Swargaloka, they become also auspicious. They are thinking, So Asmat Trata Bhavishyati. Now in my family, one great Vaishnava son appeared and he will deliver us from the Swarga upwards. So today, again I am fortunate one. Somehow or other I got opportunity to glorify great Vaishnava, great devotee of our society, one of Brahmananda Swami. Hare Krishna.